I don't think recreating one of Princess Diana's most iconic dresses would have ever even occurred to me if I hadn't seen Rose Nora Anna's videos on TikTok. So I was very much a 90s kid, and I remember Princess Diana being on the tabloids in the supermarket almost every week. People are just fascinated by her. We have The Crown, we had the film Spencer, I remember her being on Franklin Mint Dolls. Fast forward to today, and here I am recreating one of her gowns. My name is Ryan Jude Noveline, and I'm an artist and a custom dressmaker. Drawing has always been my first love, and my professional career started at Walt Disney Imagineering. Somehow I ended up making this t-shirt of Princess Diana in this dress a couple years ago during the pandemic, just for fun. Be careful when you do things for fun, you never know where they're going to lead you. And apparently this was going to lead me to New York. Through Instagram, I ended up connecting with a company called Zaloof Fabrics out of New York City. I collaborated with them on a couple of projects, including printing my art on an enormous velvet gown. And if you would like to see the process for that dress, I have an entire video on my channel, so go check that out. So one of the really awesome things about Zaloof is that you can get swatches from them for free, and they're pretty large, and they put a little sticker with your name on them. So Diana's con dress from 1987 was a very particular shade of ice blue, and unfortunately they did not have that color in their selection of fabrics. So I had to get creative. And what I did was choose every single shade of blue that was even remotely close so that I could test layering them on top of each other to see if I could match two of them together and create a similar color to the original ice blue dress. And after much deliberation, I did finally settle on the two fabrics I was happiest with. This project was a couple of years ago, and I remember as I look back at the footage that it was the night of a Category 1 hurricane that was passing over, and the walls were shaking, and this was the way that I calmed my nerves, essentially just working through the storm. The original Catherine Walker dress is just an absolute masterpiece of craft. The most delicate hand pleating of that beautiful silk chiffon. So I'm diving in headfirst with polyester fabrics, which are significantly heavier and don't actually behave the same way that real silk does. And I had absolutely no idea how to do that pleating, but you know what? That's how you learn. Rose lives in the Netherlands, and I am in the United States, so I knew that there was not going to be any fittings from start to finish for this dress. I wanted to measure out the material for that scarf first because I was worried if I did it at the end that I might not have enough. And the skirt was looking absolutely lovely, but boy was she heavy. Even at this very early stage, just seeing the scarf and the skirt in the studio alone was pretty exciting. I bought that elevated pedestal from a local antique store, and it was super handy for trimming the skirt. And the next step was to grab my handy-dandy draping tape and decide what the bodice was going to look like underneath. That dress pattern is almost symmetrical, but because of the crisscross shape that goes across the front, I had to drape it all the way around. I love that fashion is so sculptural, or it can be sculptural, so I really enjoy this part. And what you can't see is that as I'm doing this, I keep looking over at the photographs of the gown on my phone from different angles to see if I'm capturing it correctly. No patterns to work with, so we're really just winging it here. So I decided to drape my own pattern, and we do that by taking cotton muslin and cutting it into little pieces that we drape over our tape. I believe that tape comes in different colors, but I will tell you that the black is super handy because you can just see it clearly enough through cotton muslin fabric. And then I use very fine Sharpie pens to make that very clean line just over where the tape is. For a corseted bodice like this, it's going to take quite some time to do all of those separate sections of pieces. Once I pressed them all flat, the next thing I did was to true up the pattern with a pen very carefully over the lines, and then that all then needed to be transferred onto paper. When I did this project, I was still using that light tracing table pad thing that you can buy on Amazon. It's not terribly expensive, and I still have it, but I typically use tracing paper now instead. It's just a little bit easier because I don't actually need the light behind it to see through the paper. And then put your favorite movie on while you spend the next 3 hours cutting out all of the individual sections of your pattern. And yup, for this particular dress, we had an enormous number of individual small triangles and bodice sections that all needed to be cut out of everybody's favorite polyester satin. I have a pretty long rant built up about how much I despise polyester satin, not because there's anything innately wrong with it, it's just an extremely difficult material to work with. It frays really easily and it slides while you're trying to sew with it. The shininess also reveals pretty much every flaw in your sewing. I think one of the keys to getting stronger as a designer is being able to take really cheap, inexpensive, and sort of plain materials and elevate them into looking beautiful through exceptional craftsmanship. And the only way to get to that point is through an enormous amount of practice and trial and error and not being afraid to screw up. You get a nice overview here of just how many of these individual sections I had to cut out, and then the next step was to very carefully hand-baste all of them together so that they wouldn't move at all when I ran them through the sewing machine. Everyone has different levels of comfort with their sewing machine and the materials and what they're accustomed to. There's a lot of different ways you can prepare your fabric to run it through the machine, but when it comes to satin, I'm really not comfortable doing anything less than hand-basting the entire section together at the seam. And after a little bit of pressing, look how beautiful it looks. After days of pattern making, I finally get a glimpse of what sort of kind of vaguely resembles the actual dress. Armed with my arthritic support gloves, which I highly recommend if you do this often, I hand baste the next layer of the satin, and then I did do another section of interfacing that I wasn't sure if I was actually going to need. I remember I was considering how to reinforce the neckline to get it to stay stiff. In retrospect, I think I would probably just do that with boning, and that the interfacing wasn't actually required, but I did try it and ended up, I believe, taking it out. I was using the sew-in corset boning. It's fairly user-friendly if you're relatively new to sewing corsets. Not only did I accidentally light it on fire, but I also blew some of the burning ash onto my pattern. And this is one of those keep calm and carry on moments. As upsetting as that error was, there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. If you have any easy coping mechanisms for when you mess up on something like this and you'd like to share them in the comments, please let me know. I recently watched a phenomenal video that someone had put together for different techniques of putting in corset boning. If I can find it again, I'll link it in the description of this video. I'm a pretty self-driven learner, and with YouTube tutorials, you can pretty much teach yourself how to do anything that you want to learn. I was lucky enough that in college, I was able to take one really intense elective course in the basics of sewing and pattern making. I learned that it's also pretty easy to break a sewing machine if you don't know how to use it properly. So if you are interested in learning more about sewing, I would highly recommend looking for maybe a local class at a community college or someone who's around you who could potentially give you some of the basics to set you up. Remember how I said earlier that I used almost all of the material that they had sent me to make this dress? These ruched sections at the top were essentially only the scraps that were left over from cutting the skirt. Watching these clips on playback, I'm going, hey man, you're getting sloppier and sloppier. What are you doing? So Rose is in the Netherlands, and I had to ship this dress overseas to her before catching a flight of my own. Because my first love was drawing, and I guess my second love was painting, that I really do kind of revert back to my drawing painting process, even when I'm doing dresses. So as I was working through the top section of the bodice with all of that ruching, I kept referring back to the original photographs of Diana at con wearing the Catherine Walker gown. I'm making this up as I go. So I know the final result is not going to look anywhere near as beautifully constructed as the original, and I'm totally okay with that. And if you're interested in sewing and improving at sewing, I really recommend that you approach your projects with that same mentality of learning and growth and experimentation. Not only will your own skills improve by doing this, but you'll also develop your own original techniques that are going to make the most sense to you. I was so dissatisfied with how I pleated this wraparound section the first time that I actually went back and redid the whole thing again. So much better the second time, so much better. I suspect that Diana was really excited to attend the Cannes Film Festival in 1987 because she approached the event with a really savvy concept. She took her primary inspiration from the film To Catch a Thief, which is one of my favorites for costumes, all designed by the incredible Edith Head. Grace Kelly wears just the most spectacular full-length evening gown made of of chiffon that evokes the watery blues of the Riviera. It's one of those spectacular looks that's so striking that you just kind of see it everywhere online. I think I first saw it on Pinterest, and I've definitely seen it on Instagram, and celebrities have dresses remade to look like it every couple years. There's even a Barbie of it. So considering the venue, I can't say that I'm surprised that that's what Diana was thinking of when she was going to a film festival in the Riviera. All of the finishing for this dress had to be done by hand. I think at this point I'm working on essentially no sleep and just desperately hoping that I'll be able to work quickly enough to finish this in time for my flight. If you sew, you know that even though this footage is sped up, at normal speed, it takes a long time to do this. You can only work so quickly. I was tremendously fortunate to have the opportunity to be a Fashion Week intern in New York City when I was in college, but the experience gave me so much PTSD that I really can't enjoy The Devil Wears Prada. I could make an entire video about that experience, and I probably won't because I don't want to relive it. But if you were a fashion intern yourself and you're hearing this and you're thinking, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about, please comment and let me know what your experience was like. And if even after your internship you can still watch The Devil Wears Prada, I would love to know. I was flying out with my family, so first I had to take the dress with me to my parents' house to finish it. I wound up going on Facebook Marketplace to grab the cheapest form I could find to finish the dress by hand at their house. I spent the majority of the time there hand basting that scarf that goes around her neck. And the moment you've been waiting for, here is Rose presenting our Diana collaboration. This footage was lovingly taken by her stepfather, and her brother also assisted on the shoot. While they were filming inside the empty theater, there was actually a concert pianist who was practicing on stage. I was blown away by this footage when I saw it. Similar to how my t-shirt was an illustrated portrait of Diana, this was one made in fabric. Rose is a fashion and beauty influencer, and she has an entire video on her channel where she goes through the process of getting her haircut for this shoot. There is something just incredibly surreal about watching Rose wander through that enormous empty theater in that formal gown. Well, almost empty. Rose was brave enough to collaborate with me on 2 Princess Diana gowns, so if you would like to see the second part of our collaboration, where I recreate the Travolta gown out of blue velvet, you can find the link for that on my channel. Princess Diana left an indelible legacy on the world of fashion with all of her incredible looks. Which one was your favorite? So they took their footage in February, and it was really cold, and I don't know what possessed Rose to run out into the darkness wearing only the gown, twirling around singing to Billy Joel. And then the dress started popping up in all of this fashion media. Marie Claire, Yahoo News, People. Even today, everyone just loves Diana. I was admittedly a little disappointed this look wasn't in the crown, but I think we made something pretty special and I'm extremely proud of it.